Chapter 19, From Stalemate to Crisis. The Politics of Equilibrium. So people had strong loyalties to their political parties, so therefore there was electoral stability and a high voter turnout. However, the party identification was based more on culture than economic interest. At this time period, the federal government did little except subsidize railroads and the Civil War pension system, which failed. The president has to make appointments without offending the factions in each party. During the Rutherford B. Hayes administration, stalwarts and half-breeds threatened to split the Republican Party. The battle over patronage worsens Hayes' frustrating presidency. Republican candidate James Garfield wins the presidency in 1880, and there was Republican control of both houses. He was a half-breed with a stalwart vice president, and he tried to defy the stalwarts and showed support for civil service reform. However, his public quarrel with the stalwarts leads to his assassination. And Chester A. Arthur, his vice president, succeeds him, and he also supports civil service reform. He went through with the Pendleton Act, in which some federal jobs are filled by competitive exams rather than patronage. In 1884 was Republican James Blaine versus Democrat Grover Cleveland. Cleveland narrowly wins, and he frequently vetoes. He wants to reduce the tariff. The Republicans want to raise rates, so the deadlock becomes an issue. In 1888, the Democrat candidate is Cleveland, and he proposes tariff reductions, whereas the Republicans had Benjamin Harrison, who advocated protection of the tariff. Harrison wins the electoral vote, though Cleveland wins the popular vote. Public opinion forces the government to consider these issues, such as curbing power of the trusts. The Sherman Antitrust Act was a federal law to try to curb the power of the trusts, but it had virtually no impact. The McKinley Tariff was a Republican protective measure over the tariff. In 1890, the Republicans lose the majority, and this time Democrat Grover Cleveland wins over Harrison, and there's a Democrat majority in Congress. Cleveland used the government minimally and didn't pursue active efforts to deal with social and economic problems. However, he did do modest tariff reductions in the Wilson-Gorman tariff. In the Wabash case, railroad regulation is interstate commerce, so it's exclusively the power of Congress and the federal government rather than the states. The agrarian revolt. There's a group called the Grange. Originally, it was created to bring farmers together and learn new agricultural techniques and provide a feeling of community. But with the Depression of 1873, there's a decline in farm prices and an increase in membership. So their focus is shifted from social to economic. Their grievances include they want to circumvent the middlemen, curb monopolies, so they come up with the Farmers' Declaration. However, their cooperative enterprises failed. However, they did get control of Midwestern legislatures and some railroad rate regulations. However, these regulations are destroyed by the courts and political inexperience. The destroy regulations, plus the political inexperience, plus the temporary return of prosperity leads to a decline in the Grange's power. Then up comes the farmers' alliances, which tried fixing local problems and promoted cooperation as an alternative economic system. They're more open to participation by women than other organizations. They even advocated women's suffrage. One of the famous women advocates was Mary Lease. However, it suffered similar problems as the Grange. Economic frustrations lead to the creation of a national political organization. The Southern and Northwestern alliances join in a loose merger, and they form the Ocala Demands, which is essentially a party platform. They gain political power through the candidates they supported, and they even consider a third political party. The third party they named the People's Party, and their members are known as Populists. In the election of 1892, there were many populist candidates, and those with populist support elected to state and federal government. Populists were farmers whose types of farming is becoming overshadowed by diversity, mechanization, etc. They're economically and culturally marginalized and isolated. They did not attract labor support. So the miners support populism, and there's the free silver movement to allow silver to become the basis of the currency along with gold to expand the money supply. During this movement, blacks are possible allies. There are colored alliances, but whites must remain in control. However, when the blacks are attacked for undermining the whites' supremacy, the interracial character fades. There's a reform program laid out in the Omaha Platform, which proposed a system of sub-treasuries to replace cooperatives. This would improve the ability of people to influence the political process. There's more in government ownership of communications, postal savings, income tax, and currency inflation. Their idea was that progress and growth should continue, but that is only defined by the individual and community needs. Then we come to the crisis of the 1890s. The Philadelphia and Reading Rail, plus the National Cordage Company, is bankrupt, so this collapses the stock market and leads to bank failures. That's the Panic of 1893. Because of the way that American economy is interconnected, failures in one area affect other areas. So if the railroads suffer, everything suffers. The unemployment during this time period is comparable to that of the Great Depression. Jacob S. Coxey suggests a public works program to create jobs for the unemployed. Coxey's army marches on Washington. However, he's arrested, and the Congress took no action on their demands. So this labor turmoil leads to dangerous instability. The financial panic weakens the government's monetary system. So this leads to the money question, which precipitates conflicts. So there are two metals, the basis for the dollar: gold and silver. The ratio of silver to gold is 16 to 1. However, the silver is actually much higher in markets. So they could be sold to other places than the Federal Mint for more money. So there's a discontinuation of coining silver. However, in the 1870s, the value of silver falls below the 16 to 1 gold, so it's available for coinage again. What's known as the Crime of '73 is the demonetization of silver. the silver miners are eager to be paid higher than the market price. The farmers want the currency inflation to raise farm prices and ease payments of their debts. So there's the Sherman Silver Purchase Act, in which they buy silver and pay for it in gold. So this weakens the gold reserves and splits the Democratic Party. Silver is known as the people's money, whereas gold is known as of oppression and exploitation. Which brings us to a cross of gold. The Republicans nominate William McKinley, who opposes free coinage of silver. However, there's a debate in the Democratic Convention. The defenders of the gold standard dominate until William Jennings Bryan comes along with his cross of gold speech in support of free silver. He is nominated for president, and the Populist supports him. But their fusion with the Democratic Party would be the destruction of their own party. With William Jennings Bryan comes along with the birth of modern campaigning, touring the country, etc. The tradition before this time had been standing for office rather than running for office. The person who was running for office didn't do anything for his campaign. He let everybody else do it. So McKinley wins this election, and therefore the People's Party is dissolved because their candidate did not win. McKinley is committed to reassuring stability and easing the economic crisis. So the Dingley tariff raises tariff rates. The Currency/Gold Standard Act made all American currency based in the gold value. So this cycle of expansion follows, and the currency supply inflated much further than anticipated. So another major issue now is the U.S. presence in world affairs and the possibility of imperialism.